Hello everybody and welcome to the session number 3 of our module. The topic today is global talent management. And to start with, let's define what talent is. Well, talent can be considered as a natural aptitude or skill of a person to do something. It is a natural endowment. Let's say it's something that is given. It's like a gift, and every person has something that is given in a sense of what they can offer, whether they like it or not. Normally you like something that you have a talent for. It is also regarded as a special ability. It's a capacity for achievement of success, and it's a special intellectual capacity or ability that a person has to learn things easily or to develop an activity with great skill. So, actually, it's not very easy to define the term talent. I tend to think that talent, the sources of talent, are two. One is given by nature, and one is given by the culture. And I will explain in the next slide how this works. So, where does talent come from? Well, if we look at the right hand side of a slide, we see individual complexity. What I call individual complexity is basically the two components that make a person behave the way they do. And this is heavily influenced by the talents a person have. So we have, on the one side, we have two circles here. On the one side we have a human nature. What is human nature? Human nature is everything that is given to you at birth. It is everything that is given to you genetically. It is everything that is given to you as an innate gift. Those are the things you're born with, okay? And that belongs to your physical aspect. That belongs to your body, that belongs to your biology, that belongs to your genetical system, basically. It's associated with your DNA and so on. Well, that's given to you by nature. On the other side, we have your individual culture. What is individual culture? Individual culture is all the experiences that you have in your life that contribute to the development of certain skills that are associated with your talent. In other words, individual culture is all this set of values, belief systems, taboos, your thoughts, your ideas, your perceptions, your prejudices, that together with that human nature, when you combine them, the result is something that is very unique, and it's called your personality. Personality has both your innate abilities and your learned skills. Okay, your human nature is universal. It's applicable to every human. Of course, every human is given different talents. And on the other hand, you have your personal life experience. All right, in the middle is your personality. We go to the left hand side of a slide and we see the levels of operation of human activity. 4 of them. All humans operate under these 4 levels. We start in the bottom and we see physical level. Your physical level is associated with your human nature. Okay? The next level here is the affective level. The affective level is related to both your human nature in the form of instincts and emotions, and your individual culture in the form of feelings and sentiments. When you combine them, you create and experience that affective level. Then we have the mental level. The mental level is also both human nature on the one side, because you have a brain and the brain has its wiring inside, and you have the neurons and the synapse and everything that happens at the brain level, but it's not isolated from your intellect. which is on the other side, which is in the individual culture. That's your thinking process, that is your thoughts, and that's how you connect, or let's say bring in information into your brain. So mental level is both. And then you have the immaterial level. The immaterial level is on the opposite side of human nature, beyond individual culture, and it's everything that remains after death. Okay, so everything, we're like computers. All right, so on the one side, the human nature is the hardware of the computer, your individual culture is the software of the computer. Okay, so the mental level here will be something like the operating system. And what's the immaterial level? Immaterial level, it's everything that this computer produces in a lifetime. Human nature will die one day, you know, our body will die one day. But your individual culture has, it would also die when your body dies, but what remains is what you left after you leave, okay? So, I don't know if this is clear enough, but what I'm trying to explain here is where does talent come from? Talent comes from human nature and your individual culture. So here's an interesting model. It's a Japanese concept that means a reason for being. Okay, and this is more kind of a philosophy, if you like, and it's basically showing the four circles: love, need, paid for, and good at, that relate among each other, and every intersection has a different meaning or explanation. For example, the combination of what you love and what the world needs, it's called mission. The intersection between what the world needs and what you can get paid for, it's called vocation. And vocation, by the way, is related to your human nature, not so much to your individual culture. Of course, there are some influences of your culture, but your vocation is something that is given to you. I tend to believe, and there are some documents that support this idea, that you're somehow given with your vocation. And then the intersection between what you can get paid for and what you're good at is your profession. And your profession is something that you choose in your life, hopefully. In former times, 50 years ago, maybe you were forced to study something. Because your father was a doctor, then you had to be a doctor. Well, this is not the case anymore. You choose your profession, so this is not given at birth, this is given at the individual culture level. And then what you're good at, combined with what you love, it's what they call passion. And passion, you cannot fake it. Passion is there when you really enjoy and like what you do, and when you have a talent to do something. So in my lectures, when I talk about talent management, I emphasize a lot of the role of passion. Because if you don't like what you do, you will not perform sooner or later. You do your work, but you don't do it at its best because you probably don't like it as much. Anyway, so you see these intersections, they have on outside of the circles we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. Number 1 says, okay, your passion is related to satisfaction, the feeling of uselessness when it doesn't work. Fine. Point number 2 says delight and fullness, but no wealth. And number 3, excitement and complacency, but sense of uncertainty maybe. And number 4, comfortable but feeling of emptiness. Anyway, I recommend that you go and investigate about this model, which is very interesting, and it might help in your individual case, personal case, on discovering what your talents are. Very helpful. So, what is talent management? So we describe what talent is, where talent comes from. So, what is talent management? Well, it's a set of business practices that manage planning, acquisition, development, retention, and advancement of talent in order to achieve business goals and optimize performance. So this is very related to the topic yesterday of staffing the international organization. So once you hire somebody, okay, you have to work on that person to give that 100% of the talent that they possess. And again, this talent, they have it. That's it. It's given. You cannot force somebody to have a talent. For example, if you're good at painting, you're good at painting. Nobody taught you how to do that. Now, if you get a technique, if you get trained, if you get expertise, you can of course improve, but the talent is there. And you cannot give talent to a person that simply does not have the talent. Okay, so we've seen what is talent, where does this come from, and what is talent management. So what does talent management require? Talent management requires organizational philosophy. There must be a philosophy behind the organization that has to do with the levels of consciousness of the organization, with the ideals of the organization, with the ultimate goals of the organization, with the vision of the organization. Then a model, a focus on planning, and is driven by a process. So in this little drawing we see the goal is in the middle, and then you have this loop that is talking about imagine, plan, create, improve, ask. And again, imagine, plan, create, improve, ask. A never-ending process. This is like a loop, the loop of talent management. Okay? Good. Philosophy is a holistic view of the employee population. Regarding the workforce as a valued entity, providing guidance and support to achieve full potential, employee and organizational goals are not mutually exclusive and is a shared vision within a supportive culture. So the idea of philosophy involves everything that has to do with the essence of the organization. Very related to the mission and perhaps the source of the vision of the organization. By the way, this is normally provided by the founders of the organization. The philosophy is always behind. Okay. Talent management model. I chose this model because it shows very interesting aspects of performance. Okay, so you have on the top of this a vision that has to be in accordance to the leader's mindset. The infrastructure, process building, guiding coalition, and then down there you have the implementers, okay? Managers as talent leaders and employees as initiators. All these resulting in a high performance culture and opt-in organizations. Okay? You have the source of this model down there. Talent management focus. Traditional employment focus, skills and education, duties and responsibilities, some characteristics, for example, strength, repetitive, endurance, and of course the experience. Talent management focus, traditional plus more scrutiny on traits, behavior, and talent. It's interesting how when we observe the concept of talent, it's very broad, you know. It's we can't say talent management is human resource management. It's not the same thing. Human resource management has to do with some other technical things, and it has to do with the links with accounting and payroll and taxations and many other things. Talent has to do with the person, with the development of the person, with caring about the person, with the cultivation of those talent of people. Good. Talent management is a part of human resource management then. Okay, well, it has to do with recruitment and selection. Why? Because it involves knowledge, skills, and abilities, which is an essential part of talent. So again, knowledge, mental level, skills, learned, abilities, innate, given at birth. Okay, so we have the three components here. Then employee development and training has to do with improve skills and broaden knowledge. Look, it says improve skills, not improve abilities. You see why? Because skills are related to something that you learn intellectually and not by a talent that is given to you, which is a case of an ability. What else? Talent management as part of HR. Well, performance management. Provide feedback for improvement. Has to do with compensations and benefits, rewarding employees to meet financial needs, and very important, succession planning. Who are the tomorrow's leaders? Who are the ones who are going to take over when the old people are gone? Okay, so succession plan is a very important aspect of talent management, extremely related to human resource management. So how to identify talent in an organization? Well, you can make an inventory. What are the key positions in the organization? What are the needed competencies? Knowledge, skills, abilities, attitudes, and attributes. Another part of inventory, identify high potential and high performing employees. Sometimes organizations have so much knowledge, so much talent that they don't know they have, and they can use it for the purposes of the business as long as people want to share and contribute. So making an inventory, it's a practice that is very common, especially in big organizations that have the infrastructures and means and budgets for that. Okay, I'm going to show you now another interesting model on the optimal workforce. We see on the blue areas here the different areas, phases, for example, planning, attracting, developing, retaining, and transitioning. Okay, so again, the essential areas of human resource management. Planning, for example, understand business strategy, measurement, evaluation, workforce plan. Attracting, well, marketing. How do you attract the people? Employee value proposition, talent acquisition, freelancers, consultants. And then developing, we have something so-called onboarding. Onboarding means when you do, for example, the induction that we saw yesterday in lecture, how you get the people familiar with the organization, with the values, with the culture, with the climate, with the whatever belief systems and practices. Performance appraisals management, learning and development, career pathways, and capability and frameworks. And then you have retaining the culture, remuneration strategy. How do I keep the people in the organization? Especially talented people, because talented people can leave tomorrow and go to a competitor and that offers more and succeed there. So when you have somebody with talent, you gotta keep that person, okay? So, and transitioning, succession planning. Who is going to replace those big talents that you have? Internal mobility, retirement, knowledge management, and the exit interviews. And then we have these orange boxes where you can see the input as the organizational strategy, and then the outcome as the organizational performance. This model explains very well the notion of organizational behavior, by the way, from the HR perspective, not only from the cultural perspective. Okay, so next, what does talent management involve? Well, it involves personality of people, and we saw what personality is. Personality is a combination of your human nature and your individual culture. It involves intelligence, it involves attitudes, experiences, competencies, abilities, creativity, innovation, which is not the same. Creativity and innovation. The difference between creativity and innovation is that creativity is just something that you produce as a new thing. It probably never, it didn't exist, and it's new and it's nice, but maybe has no use. So only when your creativity produces something that adds value, then we can talk about innovation. Well, it also involves responsibility, ways of thinking, ethical values, adaptability, teamwork, spirit, and satisfaction. Mapping the talent management. Well, we have another interesting model here. I hope you're not really tired of models, but models are very, very good to understand the concepts that are explained. So, in the middle of all the intersections, we have talent management. Then we have the strategy, HR management, and succession planning, for example. So between strategy and HR management, we have recruitment. Between HR management and succession planning, we have development of people. Okay? You cannot work or have a successful succession planning if you do not develop the people. Okay? And then between succession planning and strategy is the retention of the talent. The external influences, globalization, technology, information, knowledge, services, quality, competitiveness, and productivity. Okay? Remember, this is a global perspective. Okay? So the international influencers of talent management. Good. What is the criteria of talent management? Well, 6 points here. The size of a talent pool. How many people are considered in that talent pool? Let's imagine this is when you are trying to work in a succession plan. You know, you're looking for a successor for the CEO. Okay, and you're internally recruiting the people. So the size of a talent pool. Entry criteria. How easy is it to meet the criteria to enter that talent pool? Decision process. How many people are involved in deciding who is to be classified as a talent to do a replacement? Permanency of the definition. How permanent is the labeling of talent? Recruitment and source of talent. Where are key vacant roles recruited from? And then, of course, transparency. How transparent is the talent management system? Talent management challenges. Today, we could say that the idea is to move from operational and bureaucratic environments into more strategic thinking environments. This is one of the big challenges of talent management. You have to train people or help people to become more strategic rather than operational and bureaucratic. Move from surveillance and control, like in maybe 50 years, 100 years ago, into a more association and commitment type of approach. Or the short-term and immediacy to a long-term vision. Administrative moving to advisory. The focus on the function versus the focus on the business, the big picture. Or another challenge is moving from the internal and introverted approach to an external focus on the client. From reactive and problem solving to proactive and preventive. You see the big difference here? Reactive problem solving, yes, every company does that. But what if we were, or companies were, more proactive and preventive? And then the focus on activity and media towards the focus on results and goals. Okay, so this is talent management challenges. Managing talent in the organization. In talent-powered organizations, this is a term that is coined already and you find it in the literature, talent-powered organizations. Organizational capabilities in defining, discovering, developing, and deploying talent allow everyone in the organization to identify and nurture talent in ways that enhance performance. In a talent-driven economy, talent-powered organizations understand that while top leadership and HR involvement are essential, a talent mindset and capabilities must be embedded and sustained throughout the organization. Okay, so talent in the organization. How to manage the talent in the organization. The Talent Power Organization. What is a Talent Power Organization? It is an organization that invests in building distinctive capabilities. What makes you unique as a company? What distinguishes you from your competitor, even if you do have the same type of business? Talent Power Organizations are adept at defining the talent needs, discovering diverse sources of talent, developing the organization's individual and collective talents, and deploying talent in ways that engage and align people around a compelling set of objectives. So I hope you get now the concept of talent power organization within a talent power economy. There are 5 talent imperatives. The first one is talent is a strategic issue. It's not operational, it's not a cost, it is a strategic. And a human capital strategy is an intrinsic part of any business strategy. This means that understanding the value of talent and recognizing the critical components of business strategy that require us to think through the talent and organizational implications and options. So imperative number 1, talent is a strategic issue. Number 2, diversity is the organization's biggest asset. And I haven't said that enough in my lectures, that diversity is the key of the success of the future organizations. Why? Very simply, diversity is associated with high levels of innovation. And high levels of innovation guarantee the remaining and the existence of organizations, the survival of organizations. Number 3, learning and skills development is one of the most important capability of the talent-powered organization. Development needs to be focused on and built around a clear understanding of the specific skills and competencies the organization needs to succeed. Point number 4, engagement is the mystery ingredient that can transform business performance. And engagement has to do with levels of loyalty. And levels of loyalty has to do with your talents. Yes, how? Why? Well, if you're talented and you exploit that talent and you enjoy it and you have passion, then there's engagement. And if there is engagement, you stay in the job and you perform good. Aligning and motivating people enables to multiply talent in the organization and improve its performance. Number 5, imperative. Nurturing and developing talent is everyone's concern in the organization. The HR function is a key enabler, but best practices and a talent mindset and culture must be embedded and sustained throughout the business. Okay? So we have 5 imperatives. Talent is a strategic issue. It's a human capital strategy, an intrinsic part of any business. Number 2, diversity is the organization's biggest asset. And number 3, learning and skills development is one of the most important capabilities for the talent power organization. Number 4 and 5, engagement as the mystery ingredient, and nurturing and developing talents must be a concern of everybody in the organization. Strategic importance of talent. Converging economic, societal, and technological forces have all elevated the importance of talent for the 21st century organizations. As I said, this is a matter of survival for organizations of the future. Talent power organizations anticipate and take advantage of the rapidly changing talent landscape. shaped by sustained worldwide growth, the rise of new economic sectors, and the increasing role of human capital in increasing value for organizations. The challenge of engagement, changes in attitudes about the work-life priorities and so on. Talent power organizations understand that engagement is a powerful force. And as business becomes ever more dependent on talent, truly talent power organizations engage employees to achieve superior performance. What is the composition of human talent? Well, there's 4 components here. Knowledge, which again has to do with your mental level, your intellectual, your thinking process, your reflection process, your reasoning. And then the ability. The ability again has to do with your innate aptitudes. Those talents that you inherited almost genetically if you want. Those are the things that are given to you as gifts. Something that you're good at. You don't know why, but you're good at it. And then judgment. And then the attitude. So knowledge, it's about knowing. Know how, learn to learn. Learn continuously, expand your knowledge, transmit your knowledge, share your knowledge. The ability, since it has to do with something that you have passion for, then results in doing. Apply the knowledge, global and systemic vision, teamwork, leadership, motivation, communication. And then the judgment has to do with analyzing. Evaluate the situation, obtain data, have critical spirit, judge the facts, define priorities, and then the acting associated with the attitudes. Entrepreneurial attitude, for example, innovative attitude, change agent, risk-taking, focus on results, self-realization, and readiness. Okay? Very interesting model of the 4 components of human talent. Another one, in case you were expecting more of these models. Here we see the formation of competencies. At the bottom of this model we see the person. And then there's 2 possibilities here, or 2, let's say, ways, parallel paths. Innate characteristics and attitudes, aptitudes, those are the things that are given at birth, right? Human nature. And then the acquired characteristics, which are the learned. This has to do with your life experience and your culture of origin and the language you speak and your parents and your peers and your teachers. This is the environment, the societal environment where you grew up. The other one is the things that you're born with. These 2 components get into the knowledge set in terms of abilities, judgments, and attitudes. What else influences those? Well, on the one side, the environmental forces, which is again related to the nature, and on the other hand we have organizational influences. Environmental influences, family, education, social groups, community, the environment around us. Organizational influences, the organizational culture, the structure of the organization, the style of management, and the opportunities. After this complexity, you end up in competencies. And those competencies can serve for an economic value for the organization, but as well as a social value for the person. And this is when we can see that the main objective, let's say, of any organization is to make profits. But it's not necessarily for a person that the priority that the company makes profit. Of course, it's important because they pay you. However, there is also social value, and there is also contribution to the society. And this is now related to the vision of the organization that has to do with perhaps corporate social responsibility and so on. Anyway, I have another small case study for you, more or less similar to the ones that we saw in the last lecture, on how culture, in this case, will have an impact in human resource management, but in this case we see the talent management very clearly. Okay, so here's a case number 3. Imagine this is a Japanese company. So you see a curve. This curve is what I call the curve of organizational culture. So, on top of this curve, everything is in Japanese. Why? Because it's a Japanese company and all the executive managers are Japanese people, which is, by the way, very classic in Japanese companies. So the top management are Japanese. So in order to be able to understand and work at that level, you must be a Japanese. It's something that you have to have almost in your blood. Of course not, but what I'm trying to say is that you have to be Japanese to really understand and think in those terms. But you can get close. You can adapt. You can move up. This company, and here's a case, hired 2 people 5 years ago for exactly the same position, to do exactly the same job. They got exactly the same type of contract, and they get exactly the same amount of payment for their job. There is just one difference. Johannes from Germany, after 5 years of working in the company, he was able to move to a high level of the organizational culture, as you can see in the graph, because in 5 years Johannes was able to learn Japanese. He goes to Japan 2 times a year on his own, or by his own means. He has a Japanese girlfriend. He eats sushi every day. His house is decorated in Japanese way, so he's fascinated about Japan. So that's why he was able to adapt, move up. He will never be a Japanese, right? He will never be on the top, but he will be more or less in the middle, upper middle. Good. He's a good employee. He contributes. And the Japanese, they appreciate that he learns Japanese and everything. On the other hand, we have Rajesh. Rajesh is from India. He was hired 5 years ago to do exactly the same as I said. But Rajesh was not into learning Japanese or into learning the culture of the Japanese, or not at all. He was just there to do his job. And he does it well. He performs, he brings the results, he loves his job, he's passionate, he's got talents. So, one of Johannes' friends was talking to him one day and said, Johannes, given the fact that you now speak Japanese, you know so well the culture, you know almost everything about Japan, I think you should ask for an increase in your salary based on the fact that you can actually contribute more to the company. So Johannes goes to the Japanese supervisor and asks for an increase in salary. So here's again a question that I ask when I do this face-to-face. Who of you would say, sure, he deserves an increase in salary because he speaks Japanese, so he can help us with translations or interpretations, and he can understand our discussions better, and he can more or less know why we do the things the way we do it. So, what do you think is the answer of the Japanese people? Well, the Japanese will come and say, well, Johannes, thank you very much for your engagement with our culture, with your passion for our culture. All these in Japanese, of course, and but we did not hire you to do that. I mean, thank you, we appreciate it, but you're a good employee and you have your contract and we pay you for what you do. Thank you very much. So, well, that's reasonable. And you can say, well, that's how they proceed and that's the way it is, and maybe culturally speaking, that's the way they should act. I don't know, maybe you who are watching this video come from a different culture and you would say, oh, wait a minute, in my culture, of course he will get an increase in salary. I think of my own culture, and I think that will be the case. They will discuss it and say, yeah, you deserve it. I think I would say an American company would be willing to do that because they're more, they're based on the merits of people. Well, let's imagine they say no to him. But after a couple of years, there is a position available for promotion. So for to become a supervisor. So who do you think they're going to choose? Well, yeah, everybody thinks, of course, Johannes. But I forgot to mention something. Johannes is 29 years old and Rajesh is 42 years old. So again, who do you think they're going to choose? Yeah, they go for Rajesh. And now you may say, well, what an injustice here. Why they're choosing this guy instead of Johannes? Johannes speaks Japanese. He's fascinated. He's so into the culture. And now they choose a guy that didn't show any interest. Well, the Japanese value age, and is one of the most important values of the Japanese culture. So a traditional Japanese company, in this case, will promote the older person rather than the younger. And that's ethical, and that's good, and that's the way it should be in that culture. Maybe in another culture is different. But now we're talking about talent management. What's going to happen with the levels of motivation of Johannes when he sees that they have promoted Rajesh instead of him? So his motivation may go down. He might be even wanting to quit. He probably will be disappointed, or he will probably accept it but not be happy. You never know. So how does that relate with talent management? Well, when it comes to culture, we have little space for making decisions related to this, but perhaps a good training about the culture of the company and of the founders of the company would have helped in the beginning to at least I don't want to use the word indoctrinate, but maybe the word inform or teach how things work, so that Johannes should have known in advance that that was a possibility, and that has nothing to do with his talent, because the Japanese still appreciate his work, and actually they really appreciate the fact that he speaks Japanese and all these things. They just don't understand what is the connection between this and getting promoted or an increase in salary if he's only 29. Okay, so that was a case for you to reflect. When we talk about talent management, we must talk about intellectual capital. What's intellectual capital? Well, it consists of the stocks and flows of knowledge available to an organization. These can be regarded as intangible resources. So basically, has to do with the knowledge people have in the organization. For example, tangible sources are money, physical assets, and so on. But this is an intangible. Comprise the market or total value of a business in the case of money and physical resources. But this also represents value for a business. So intellectual capital, we're going to spend the next few minutes talking about this. What are the elements of intellectual capital? Basically three: human capital, social capital, organizational capital. What's human capital? Well, the knowledge, skills, abilities, and capacity to develop and innovate possessed by people in an organization. Social capital, structures, networks, and procedures that enable those people to acquire and develop intellectual capital. And then organizational capital, the institutionalized knowledge possessed by an organization that is stored in databases, manuals, etc. So there's three of them: human capital, which is the knowledge, skills, abilities of a person himself. Social capital has to do with the socialization processes, with the networks, with the relationships, with the structures, with the flows. And then the organizational capital, which is what the organization keeps as a base for building knowledge. And People come and go in organizations. They can go to an organization, work there for 2 years, and then they leave. But the company gains what? They gain the knowledge that this person left in the company. Okay? So, in intellectual capital, which consists of the flows of knowledge available in the organization, we have three elements: human capital, social capital, organizational capital. So, what is the significance of intellectual capital? It is the knowledge, skills, and abilities of individuals that create value. Remember when I said creativity and innovation are not the same? Well, intellectual capital is related to creating innovation, adding value. Organizational effectiveness also depends upon making good use of this knowledge, which needs to be developed, captured, and exchanged. Knowledge management, if you heard the term, in order to create organizational capital. Human capital, remember that the three of them, human, social, and organizational. So human capital. Human capital represents the human factor in the organization, combined intelligence, skills, expertise, abilities. It has to do with the elements related to the learning, changing, innovating, creative thoughts, and which of a properly motivated can ensure the long-term survival of the organization. Human capital has to do with everything that people possess as an innate abilities, behaviors, and personal energy. And it's they and not their employers who own this capital and decide when and where they will contribute it. If you're happy in an organization, you share it. If you're not happy in an organization, you don't share it. Okay? So this is one of the most important things, by the way, that companies have to look at. If you have a happy employee, they will share their knowledge. So, work is a two-way exchange of value, not a one-way exploitation of an asset by its owner. Now, the second point, remember, social capital. Social capital refers to the institutions, relationships, and norms, not so much to the abilities, capabilities, and skills of a person. This has to do in terms of relations within the organization. So we talk about the norms, whereas in human capital we talk about the values. So norms that shape the quality and quantity of society's social interactions. The features of social lives like networks, norms, and trust that enable participants to act together more effectively to pursue shared objectives. Social capital can be regarded as a knowledge tied up and developed by relationships among employees, partners, customers, suppliers. It is built by the exchange of such knowledge, and this requires collaborative organizational environment in which knowledge and information can flow freely. Okay, so the third point was organizational capital. Okay, organizational capital consists of the knowledge owned by the organization rather than by an individual and the employees. So it's not the knowledge of the individual, it's not the knowledge of the interactions between people, it's the knowledge owned by the organization, thanks to everyone in the organization that has contributed in one way or another. It can be described as embedded or institutionalized knowledge that may be retained with the help of information technology. Nowadays, all of the documents of an employee when they're hired are digital, right? Electronic. So everything is in a database. All the information of the employees, it's in a database. And that's knowledge. And that's knowledge management. Okay. Next, practical implications of intellectual capital theory. Well, here again we have human capital, social capital, organizational capital. So a small review on this. Human capital issues concerning attraction, retention, development, and reward of a people in order to create and maintain a skilled, committed, well-motivated workforce. So the relationship of these concepts with human resource management are very well reflected in this slide. Social capital considerations relating to the design and development of organizations that enhance the processes of developing, capturing, and disseminating knowledge. And the last point here, organizational capital, issues concerned with knowledge management. Human capital practical questions. So, for example, what skills have we got? This is a question companies, managers ask themselves. For example, you maybe have an accountant in the accounting department that is very busy all day with numbers and taking care of all this. But you don't know that this person probably speaks 3 languages. And you may say, well, this is not relevant. He's the accountant. He's working with the computer and the numbers. I don't care if he speaks 3 languages. Well, a good human capital manager would say, hey, listen, yeah, he's the accountant. He does the numbers, but he speaks 3 languages. This might be powerful. This is something important. This is something interesting. Another question, what skills do we need now and in the future? Classic question of HR planning. Number 3, how are we going to attract, develop and retain these skills? Basically, what's going to be our staffing strategy? Recruitment, selection. Number 4, how can we develop a culture and environment in which organizational and individual learning takes place that meets both our needs and the needs of our future employees? And number 5, how can we provide for both the explicit and tacit knowledge created in our organization to be captured, recorded, and used effectively? Good. The management of human capital. Well, human capital management is concerned with obtaining, analyzing, and reporting on data that informs the direction of the value-adding strategy. Investment on an operational people management decisions at corporate level and at the level of frontline management. Human capital management is concerned with purposeful measurement and not just measurement. Here we have an interesting model that is developed by a company. The source is missing here, but you can find this image very easily. It talks about talent acquisition, onboarding, engagement, development, performance management, succession planning, and the workforce planning as the key factors and phases of talent management. Talent acquisition, we'll see them a little bit in detail, those. The first one here is talent acquisition. Talent acquisition is the process of finding and acquiring skilled human labor for organizational needs and to meet the labor requirement. Normally, there is also a talent acquisition department, which is basically done by the HR. It's just a different name. So talent acquisition, first aspect. Second, onboarding and engagement. Once you acquired the new employees, you gotta do the onboarding, which is also known as the organizational socialization. Get the employee familiar with the rest of the people and, most importantly, with the culture of the organization, the values and the norm system. So it refers to the mechanism through which new employees acquire the necessary knowledge, skills, and behaviors in order to become effective in the organization as the insiders. It is the process of integrating a new employee into the culture of the organization. So we have talent acquisition, we have onboarding engagement, and then we have employee development. Employee development is defined as a process where the employee, with the support of his or her employer, undergoes various training programs to improve skills, to acquire skills. Employee development is a more long-term initiative. Has to do with education, has to do with maybe a certification, maybe a language course, maybe an MBA paid by the company. So development is more long-term. So again, we have talent acquisition, onboarding engagement, employee development, which in today's work, and this is the current slide, work environment. Employee development is the number one factor for employee retention, especially among millennials. Top employee development methods used by organizations most frequently include training, programs, and leadership development. Investments in employee learning and development directly impact the employee engagement and the productivity, and therefore the levels of loyalty of the employee. So, talent acquisition, onboarding engagement, employee development, and then performance management. Performance management is the activity and set of processes that aim to maintain and improve employee performance in line with organization's objectives. It's strategic as well as operational. Next, succession planning. Succession planning is a process for identifying and developing new leaders who can replace the old leaders when they leave, retire, or die. Succession planning increases the availability of experienced and capable employees that are prepared to assume these roles as they become available. So, talent acquisition, onboarding engagement, employee development, performance management, and succession planning. We also have workforce planning. Systematic identification and analysis of what an organization is going to need in terms of size, type, and quality of the workforce. Determines what mix of experience, knowledge, and skills are required, and it sequences steps to get the right number of the right people. So, what were the elements here? We saw talent acquisition, onboard engagement, employee development, performance management, succession planning, and workforce planning. There are 5 basics in implementing talent management. Number 1, identify the assets, existing and needed talents. Number 2, hiring and developing the staff. Number 3, high value appraisals, performance management. Number 4, understanding compensations and its impact. And number 5, the turnover and succession planning for the future. The first point, identifying the assets talents, has several subpoints here. Identifying the competency skill sets needed, develop competency matrices, develop and rating scales with scoring and weighting options, track, evaluate, and manage competencies across the organizations, and implement a performance competency management system. Here you have an example of an inventory matrix. For example, you will see on the left side of the column the names of the employees, and then on top the skills. Okay, quick change, job commitment, sense of urgency, blah blah blah, and then you will be filling those little squares, and at the end try to find a person that is a talent that can work for succession. For example, if you see the results, the examples of the results down there, it says not exhibited, familiar when they have a vague idea, needs help, or competent, or when this person can actually be a mentor or teach others. So this is an inventory and matrix example. The point number 2 was recruiting and developing the staff. Recruiting versus hiring and the need to choose well in the process. Employers versus employees, development opportunities, reinforcing development with obligations, and involve top performance in mentoring and coaching. So point number 1 again was identify and assess talents. Point number 2, recruiting and developing staff. Point number 3, high value appraisals, top-down employee performance evaluations, peer-to-peer employee performance evaluations, 360-degree performance reviewers. I don't know if you are familiar with these 360-degree performance reviews. Are those in which everybody checks everybody. Everybody gives everybody a grade. You know, it doesn't matter if you're your superior, your subordinate, or your colleagues. Everybody can evaluate your performance. And self-assessment performance reviews. Point number 4, understanding compensation. What motivates who? Comparing apples to apples. Non-financial compensation. okay? Because it's not only money. At some point, at some level of management, the person are not into just the financial compensation. They're more into other kind of benefits. For example, getting a bigger office or having more time off, whatever. And then managing expectations. And the point number 5 is the turnover and succession planning. Turnover has to happen and is a two-way process. Turnover is an opportunity. Internal candidates may or may not be appropriate for vacancies. And transparency minimizes issues associated with turnover. Okay, so this is the end of this presentation. Again, thank you very much for attending this distance learning session. We have accumulated so far 3 videos where you can always, of course, go back and check information. I hope this has been helpful for you, and of course, I hope that you learned something from here. Thank you very much, and until next time.